All right. Well, welcome to the leadership training. This is going to be presented by Eric Lashley. Some of you know him, I'm sure, or if you're meeting him for the first time, there he is. And just want to thank the Texas State Library and Archives Commission for providing the funding for allowing us to do this training. And with that being said, I will turn it over to Eric Lashley.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Jeffrey, can you tell me how many people are on right now? It's hard for me to tell.
Yeah, let me see. I'm about to admit 2 more people, and let's see. So far, we got a total of about 18.
Okay.
No.
And there's B. Hey, B, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good morning. All right.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. It's nice to see so many Texas librarians. All right, so we'll figure this out because we had 62 people register for this, so we're trying to figure out how much is going to be more like interactive where y'all can participate versus we participate in chat. So anyway, it's nice to see people coming in to the program. If you would do me a favor in chat, just go ahead and put your name, position, and library so I can at least see that, record that for us. So good morning, I'm Eric Lashley, and I am the new library director here in Burbank, California. And if you're not familiar with Burbank, California, we are the real Hollywood. So this is where all the TV shows and movies and things like that are filmed. That you probably are enjoying. So it's the headquarters of the Walt Disney Company. Matter of fact, at one of my branch libraries, we're right across the street from Disney Studios. It's where Netflix is at, Warner Brothers, Nickelodeon, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and Jay Leno is filmed here in Burbank. So it's a really interesting community. It also was a part of the aerospace community. And most recently, it's been dealing with fires, the wildfires here in Los Angeles. So that I want to talk about a little bit because I think when we're talking about leadership, emergencies come up, and this has been a lot of lessons here for librarians in California with the wildfires and how to deal with these emergency situations. So here in Burbank, we were impacted mostly by our employees. I had an employee who lost her house in the Altadena, the Eaton fire. I actually live in Glendale, which is next to Pasadena. I could see the fire at night. I could see the smoke. I could smell the smoke. In night, I could see the Pacific Palisades fire and the smoke. It was just awful. I lost power for over a day. My daughter got evacuated. She lives in Santa Clarita. So it was a really trying time here in California recently, dealing with the fires. And so dealing with emergencies, dealing with the unexpected is a part of leadership. And I want to touch on that as we go through the training. Before I came to California, I was the library director in Georgetown, Texas. And I think most of y'all know me from Georgetown, and I spent over 20 years, about 25 years in Georgetown. I was the library director for 20 years. So I really have a soft spot for Texas libraries and Texas library staff, and what a difference here in California. And I really talk about that. So again, in California, we have legislation that actually protects librarians and also makes it very difficult to challenge books, which is something is like the opposite possibly in Texas that's going on right now. So we've got a large group that's participating today. So I'm going to ask people to just, even in the chat now, put, why did you decide to take this leadership class? What is it? We've seen a really spike in this class. We usually have about 20, 25 people who sign up, and we had 62 register for this class. So I want to know why all of a sudden do we have this spike in people wanting this leadership class? And I may assume that we just have new people moving into working in the profession now or whatever, but I just want to know, why are people registering for that class? So the other thing I want to go over now is just the topics that we'll be covering in the next couple of weeks as we go through this training. And then if there are topics that y'all want, I'll ask you to put that in the chat. So the topics that we'll be covering throughout the training are, one, we'll start with today just an introduction and talk about the differences between leadership and management, which is a huge thing. People often confuse the two. And then we'll talk about core values and mission. We'll talk about what is your leadership style. I think if you don't know who you are and your style, it's hard to figure out where you're going or how to work with other people in different styles. I think it's such an important lesson. Then I've got one that it's called, do you want to win? And I really find this important because years ago, I took the Stephen Covey training, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And there's chapters in there about win, lose, and things like that. And I really, this week, just had an experience where I wanted to kind of coach the staff and say, hey, guys, do y'all want to win or do you want to lose? Because if you keep doing it this way, I guarantee you're going to lose. And we get wrapped around sometimes about being so right or whatever that you're going to lose because you're not taking the right tactic. And in my case, it was a group of library pages. So we're a big system and we have this group of pages and they wanted to meet with a new library director. And the way they were approaching me was like, they're going to lose, and I just wanted to say, guys, I really hear what you're saying, but if you keep approaching it this way, you're going to lose. When I know you want to win. And so let's figure out ways to win. The other topic we'll talk about is change management. That's all about leadership. Leadership is about change. Leadership is not about status quo. It's about always changing and going into the right direction. So again, change management, you're always managing change as a leader. If you're sitting back on your laurels, that's not leadership. We're going to deal with human resources issues. This always is a big one, how to deal with personnel, how to deal with those really tough situations where you've got people who aren't pulling their weight or they've got some type of disability that you need to accommodate, how to deal with all those personnel, really tricky things that, your life would be better if things were different with your staff or whatever. And then we're going to talk about friends, foundation, and boards, your advocates and how to deal with advocates. And then we'll kind of go over graduation and talk about all the things we've learned and go through that. So if you would like me to cover other topics, go ahead and put them in the chat. So if you definitely want to talk about censorship or you want to talk about there's some other hot topic that you want me to cover, I'll make sure that we cover during this whole time training. I'll figure out where to put it in and we will cover that. So go ahead, and if there's other topics you feel like I really need to talk about this, then go ahead and put that in the chat. So today I want to just go over again introductions here of just who I am, and then we can see others in the chat who you guys are and what you're up who are here and what libraries are here. I want to think about, again, the difference between leadership and management. And I asked, again, people think it's the same thing. And again, leaders do need to have management skills. And it's not one is bad and one is good and things like that. But they are different. We often, hire managers, but we don't hire leaders. And the other biggest part is that a leader is not positional. So you can have that library page or that board member who's actually the leader of the library or is leading you in the right direction or in some way, versus positional where the supervisor signs the timesheet and does the schedule and all of that. That is management. That is a different skill set. It could be the same person doing both, and they can have skills in both of these categories, but they're very different. And the biggest test too is if you weren't a manager and you were asking people to follow you, and if you were the leader has people following them. That's the other thing. The manager does not always have people follow him. They're subordinates. And in a tough situation, would they really follow you? And that's the biggest test. Would they really follow you during something that really bad happened or whatever? Would they follow you, or would they go with, no, I'm following this person because that's the real leader, versus a positional versus this is your status, this is your position within the hierarchy. Those are two different things. So I asked, Jeffrey to send out a list, and there's two lists. They're very similar on the differences between leaders and managers. And I'm going to go over kind of those lists and go through them. And then y'all can ask me like, what's the difference between this, or we can just go over that. So again, biggest part about the essence of a leader is about change. It is not about the status quo. And again, that's why change management is so important. And again, a manager is about stability. The manager is about keeping the thing going and being very steady. Leader is like, nope, change. We're going to change. We're always constantly changing, constantly improving, doing better, looking at things differently, always looking way ahead, not the day-to-day. It's the way ahead. And that's hard for a lot of people when you're so short-staffed, or you're whatever. You're just so hard to look ahead and stop and breathe, or stop and get gas. Leaders are focused about leading people. And leaders, so simple. Leaders are leaders, right? Leaders are leading people. They have followers. Managers manage people and manage work. They manage, this is what we do at this time. We open the door at 9 o'clock. We do this, the book drop at 10. We do story time at whatever. It's about scheduling. Leaders have followers and managers have subordinates. That's a big difference again. Leaders can have people who are not even with your organization, but they follow the organization. There's no legal structure behind it. They're just getting people to move in the right direction. Leaders set that vision. They're like, we're going to Disney World. We're going here. The manager goes, okay, the leader said we're going to Disney World, and here's how we do it. We're going to do it on this day. We're going to get on a plane, and they do the micromanagement, the details. The leader says, we're going to Disney World, and this is how we're going to do it. Energy, the leader has passion. They are passionate about whatever it is they're doing. Managers are often about control. It's like, we're going to control this. Again, there's not a right or wrong here, but leaders are, again, often very visionary, very passionate, very transformative, instead of transactional. They look at how a library can really impact a community versus, we need to check out this many books. We need to have this type of ILS and does this, this, and this. Here's the big one too. Leaders are risk takers. They take risk. They aren't afraid of failure. Managers, they minimize risk, and they often are afraid of failure. That's a big difference. And that's when you know too that the leader, it may be time to retire, when the leader gets to that settling point where they're not taking risk, they're afraid of failure, they're working out of a place of fear, and it changes the thing. Here's the other one that really gets librarians all upset, is leaders break rules. They're not. And what do I mean by that? Well, again, they're not out there breaking the law, but the fact is a leader looks at it and goes, why is this a rule? Why do we do this? We had this rule like no food and drink in the library. And at some point the leader goes, why do we have this? What's the purpose of this? They question, why are we doing what we're doing? And if it doesn't make sense, they change the rule. Others will go, well, that's the rule. And if it's a rule, it must have been a good reason, and we'll just keep the rule. So the leaders are always questioning, why are we doing it? What's happening here? It's a different set. And that really bothers a lot of librarians a lot of times. They're like, oh, we're not supposed to be rule breakers. Leaders often use conflict. And what does it mean by using conflict? They realize that without, friction, there's no motion. And if they're really skilled, they take that conflict and do a kind of what I call jujitsu and turn it into the action that they want. And again, managers try to avoid conflict. It's always try to minimize risk, try to minimize issues. Leaders always going down new roads. They're looking for a different way to do library service. They're looking at whatever it is. They're always on the cutting edge a lot of times. Formal influence versus charm. So again, leaders often use their personality to make change and lead people to a different way versus their formal influence, which again is in a hierarchy. Like, I'm the library director and you're going to do it my way or the highway. A lot of times good leaders appeal to both the heart and the head. And when I say the heart, they're telling really good stories that impact people so that people understand the real impact of the library. And the difference is where you're going to a meeting or you go to the Rotary Club, instead of telling how many books you checked out, and we check out this many books, that's the head, those are the numbers. What you want to talk about is you checked out a book that saved someone's life, or you did a reference question that saved someone's life, or you did this that, you're touching someone's heart, you're personalizing how the library can really change people for the better. So again, it's like a good leader does both. They give people the return on investment, the facts, like here's what we do, but they also tell those stories. Libraries are all full of stories, and librarians need to be really good about telling those stories as we move along. The other one, proactive. Again, leaders are very proactive. They don't wait for the complaints to come. They're out there, not being reactive. They're trying to, again, predict. They're trying to look around corners. They're trying to be very proactive in saying, how is AI going to impact libraries? Instead of waiting for AI to start impacting libraries, they're already reading articles about artificial intelligence and how it may impact us moving forward. And they're trying to predict, how is X going to impact us and how can we position ourselves and be ready to respond to it. So they're being very proactive. The libraries, I think, again, who saw the challenges coming may have done much better than the ones who said it will never happen here, and boy, did they get just bulldozed. And so again, it's being very proactive, thinking, yep, this could happen in our community and we need to be prepared for it. And I need to get my advocates ready in case this happens. And then the last one I'll talk about is doing the right thing versus doing the thing right. Leaders are worried about, again, they want to do the right thing. They don't want to get stuck in, well, the rule says this and da-da-da. What is the right thing to do? We can always rewrite rules. We can rewrite policies. What is the best thing for our community? And the leaders, that's the forefront. What is the impact of the library and things like that? So this is a very important lesson that I learned early on that I really didn't think about it much. Again, when I was in library school or college, I wasn't a management student. I didn't think the difference between a leader and a manager. But once I started learning the difference and kind of deciding that, I'm more comfortable being a leader than a manager, and knowing my skill set, that this makes sense to me. Now, a good leader then will surround themselves by those people who can do the day-to-day nitty-gritty and things like that. But without having that vision or that understanding the managing change, because change is hard for everybody, and that's what we'll learn too with change management. The only person that likes to change is, the person who's leading the change a lot of times. And so again, you need to be aware of that. And just because you think it's a great idea doesn't mean that other people are going to think it's a great idea. And that's part of leadership. You have to influence them to agree that, yes, this is a great idea. And this is the direction that we want to go, versus falling back into management and saying, well, I think this is a great idea and you're going to follow me because I'm the boss and I'm the boss applesauce and that's the way it is. And those are the two differences too. So at this time, I'd like to pause. And if there's anybody that has any questions about that or feels uncomfortable about any of those differences between a manager or leader, please go ahead and chime in now. So not everybody speak at once.
Hey,
Hey, B.
Eric, I'll speak. Hey, so I wanted to just mention that, leadership to me also comes in different forms, right? As you mentioned before. And I think sometimes we kind of lose focus thinking that only the library director is the leader. And I think when we think that, we kind of lose focus in terms of those of us that may not be a library director but are in positions of what I consider a leadership position, because they may have a team that they work with, or that they are influential in the position that they're at. And I think it's more for them to realize, because sometimes they may, as you mentioned before, fail to think that they too can apply those leadership skills into their own position and area that they're in charge of, and that there's not only one person in an organization that is so-called a leader, that we're all leaders in our own perspectives, and that we just have to, and some are natural and some are not. It may take a lot for others for them to come out of their shell and feel that they're leaders themselves. But I think it all starts with you knowing and telling yourself that I can be a leader. Because if you are so taken aback and not stepping outside of your comfort zone, and a lot of times we have to do that. We have to step away from our norm and our day-to-day to realize that, hey, what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, yes, I'm managing, and sometimes it could be interchangeable. We can manage some days, and some days, we're doing both, or some days we're more leaders than managers. It can be interchangeable. So just because, you consider yourself a manager, you may have some leadership skills that may need more developing on. But at the same time, I think if you truly believe that this is something that you want to pursue more of, I think you just need to not be afraid and step out of your comfort zone and realize that you have more than what you think you have. And it's not anything where you can speak with other team members, you can speak with your library director if you need more direction. And I think all of us who do direct libraries, we want to encourage our staff to be and motivate them to be able to do that. And I know I do for mine. And so it's really important that we all realize that we do have those skills within ourselves. We just have to kind of sometimes step out of our comfort zone and try to find those things. And if we need help, there's no reason not to ask for it, because there are so many resources out there and other people that are willing to be there to support and to kind of lend a hand if needed be. So I just wanted to say that.
And you're so right about stepping outside of your comfort zone too, because I am an introvert, but I play an extrovert at work. And people will go, "Oh, you're such an extrovert." I'm an introvert. I play a role. I'm an actor here in Burbank. I play a role of being an extrovert because it's something that I know that so many of my staff are introverted. The other thing I think what you're saying there to be is setting a culture, a culture where everybody can definitely be a leader and make them feel welcome to speak up and to come up. I mean, for me to think that I'm going to direct the children's programming is absolutely insane. So I have to trust people who are doing that and those staff to do children's programming and lead that in a way. It's interesting here, again, the difference between California and Texas that I've learned, it's been a real big lesson for me, is they're unionized here in California. And that is a different thing. So when my culture, which I was like, hey, everybody's a leader, and here it's very hierarchical. You can't do that. That's not in your job spec, and that is really challenging for me where I'm like, well, of course they can do that. And they're like, this is union. The union says they can't do this. And it's really challenging for me where I trusted my staff. And yet with the union and the contracts and all that they're renegotiating now, it literally is, they can't do that. We would in Texas, you just join in and you just do it because you got to get the job done. Here it's very, you're not allowed to shelve books. Only the pages can shelve books. And, I look into the faces out there. It's a different culture. And so I'm trying to learn, how do I work within that? Where can I push the boundaries? Where can I lead differently? And I'm coming in to a organization that had very low trust between the management and the union. And I'm trying to build that trust, and they're putting me in a box, and they don't even know who Eric Lashley is yet. Right. And I'm like, guys, just trust me. I'm a good guy. And they're like, no, we don't trust you. You're management, So I'm learning too, and I'm stepping outside my comfort zone as we go through. Anybody else have anything else about the difference between management and leaders? That was good, B. And Jeffrey, I can't see the chat. So was there anything in the chat that I can touch upon?
Yeah, I got just some comments in here. I got one by Tammy M. Leadership is an important aspect in libraries versus management of staff. Good leaders have staff who want success and take ownership versus just waiting to be told what to do.
And that's absolutely true. So again, one of the challenges I'm having here in California is just even hiring the right staff, right? So here it's really interesting. They have to take a test. There's a written test they have to take. So they have to take a test with the Civil Service Board. And then the Civil Service Board ranks the scores. And then I'm given like the top 2%, 5%, and I can only interview those people. So I don't even see the wide variety or range or diversity of candidates. It's very strict, and it's not, in my opinion, the best way to hire the best people. But this is very structured. And again, I think what a good leader does is they're looking for hiring those good people to be leaders within your organization. Because the more leaders you have, the more action you got, the more that change, positive change that you can have. Now, leaders can conflict with each other too. There can be conflict. There's no doubt about it. As long as we're all going to the right vision, mission, we're all going in the right direction, it makes sense. When you have people dividing the staff, it gets really difficult. But yeah. Any other comments in the chat?
Eric, you have to change that. You have to change. You can do it. If anybody can do it, you can do it. I know in Georgia, we used to have for library assistants, we used to have where you have to, it's required for them to take tests as well. And that changed, thank goodness, because as you mentioned, it restricts you from seeing the diversity of the candidates that you're trying to hire. And as we know in schools, testing alone is not the predicament of success. So I hope that, it's something perhaps in the future that you can sort of navigate around and be able to change that. So
yeah, and again, I'm learning what I can influence. My sphere of influence is what I call it, and what can I change. And the good news is I can go back and look at the test and say this test makes no sense, and I can actually change the test and have more questions that make more sense to me. That actually what a library staff member would actually do. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Any other big differences between management and leadership that y'all see? What about the breaking rules, that leaders break rules? Did that make people uncomfortable? I see a lot of hands say, no, that didn't make me uncomfortable at all. Well, let me put this out there. Why do you think so many librarians are the rule followers? Did you see that, we have this really bad stereotype that we shush people and we're always, maybe is that a real thing or is that a stereotype or, reality?
I think that people think it just because that's how everything's portrayed in movies and books and TV. And so it's kind of the expected. And when I was growing up, I mean, my grandma would have taken me out of the library if I was too loud. So, but I think that was kind of the standard and we've shifted from there. I would also say like, okay, so as far as like leader versus manager example would be, it's also a want for your staff will want to follow you because they do have trust in you. And you can have a good manager and you can know that they're making the right decisions, but it doesn't inspire any creativity or, hope. And so I do think change is hard for people. Not me personally, usually, sometimes, but most of the time I'm like, cool, let's do that thing. But I do think it's important because it inspires your staff. I mean, they think outside the box, they learn from you. And when you have a really good leader, your leader usually also learns from their staff,
right.
And really highlights the things that maybe they know they lack in, but they have people that they know, hey, they can also do this. So I think leaders create kind of an inspiration type environment.
Oh, so true. You've said such great words there, like trust, and trust in your staff. And the biggest thing I've known, and this was really hard for staff to believe it, and I'm saying, and I actually have a staff development day this Friday here, and it's a really good opportunity for me to meet all 80 of my employees. I always say that failure is an option. And I keep telling them that if we're not failing, we're not actually doing a good job. And that is so hard for them to believe that when I say that, we need to be failing at a higher rate. Now, what I mean by that is we have got to start really doing more, being more of a risk taker. Now, but that also means that as a leader, I've got their back. I'm there to support them. I am there to go, it's okay, we failed, no big deal, good try, what did we do? What lessons did we learn from this failure? What do we do next time that's better? We know that intellectually, I think a lot of times, but if your boss yells at you for a failure, then what's your chance that you're ever going to try a risk again? So leaders have got to allow failure. And you need to be, not so hard on yourself either, because without trying new things, doing new programming, it is so stagnant, and that will kill the library. Right now, let's face it, we have in this society so many more options for entertainment, for education, the internet, we're competing with so many things. And here's the thing, guys. We provide a free product. Now, there are costs associated with it, but for the public that comes into the library to check out a book, to use the internet, it is a free service. And if we're providing a free service and we still can't get people in our door, there's something wrong. If people are more willing to go to the coffee shop or the bookstore or go wherever and pay money, we need to look in the mirror and say, guys, what are we doing wrong? We're free. And we can't compete with people when they're paying money. And we're a free public space. So what are we doing? What can we do differently? That's why the difference between, and I preach this a lot, and we'll talk about it, the book-centric library versus the community-centric library. The book-centric libraries are dying because you only have, and I love books. Please do not misunderstand or misquote me. I love books. However, your percentage of your population that are just book lovers and are going to love to read is minimal versus your community that loves sports or quilting or whatever it is. And that's why opening your doors and allowing the community to actually use your library will benefit so much more. And be honest with you, make room for people and make less room for books. Just deal with the books that people actually want. You'll be amazed how few books, how more space you actually have for people. And again, that's a hard change for people. People will feel like libraries are about books. And yes, that's true. But the fact is, those book-centric libraries are dying. They're the ones that are having a hard time getting public support. The ones that are community-centric are doing so much better. Community-centric libraries also are the ones who go out into the community and do bookmobiles and working at the nursing home and home delivery and doing all this. They don't expect people to come through their doors. They expect the library should be going out into the community. And that's about leadership too. It's like, how can this library best serve this community? And it may not be getting people in your doors. It may be going out where people can't go. And if we want to be, really serving a diverse community, sometimes that means there are people who are disabled and cannot get to the library, and we need to serve those people. That's about diversity too, serving people who cannot come to the library. So again, just trusting your staff, being a risk taker. These are tough things a lot of times, but I'm telling you, it pays off versus expecting somehow the community to come in your door if you're doing exactly the same thing you did 20 years ago. That story time is just a story time, not a story time with a craft or with yoga or music or dance or whatever. You got to change it up. And that's what the public expects. And again, if you're free and they still don't come in your door, look in the mirror and say, what are we doing wrong? What do we really need to do to get people using this library? Any other comments about that? Book-centric versus community-centric.
Definitely what Eric says in terms of outreach. And I think outreach has changed in our profession enormously, what it used to be versus what it is today. And, sometimes we have to reach people where they're at. In terms of past library services, it used to be where you come to the library and we're brick and mortar, come to us, come to us, come to us. But there's so much out there, as he mentioned, with things that are competing with us. Unfortunately, you can, as we had mentioned, back before the World Wide Web came about, and they thought the library was going to be obsolete because now the internet is here. So why go to the library and find information when you can Google it? So now there's other things out there that are constantly in competition with us. And so having the mindset to say, not just, what does my community want, but what I also think my community needs. Because sometimes that gets us up and going in terms of going to the senior facility or going to participating with the rec center or presenting at a city council, because we want to be out there to promote ourselves. We're not going to be promoted sitting in our libraries. So having to step up and out of our, brick and mortar comfort zone and reach out to the community that we're here for, I think sometimes, speaks volumes. And it makes people who do come in and say, oh yeah, I saw you at this event, or you were at that meeting. And so it connects the dots and makes us more, accessible to our community. So having that outreach is so important. And I know sometimes staffing can be an issue, especially smaller libraries with just 1 or 2 staff members. It's really hard to get out. But what happens to, creating a volunteer group or some sort of a way to also have your imprint on things. Friends group, I know that's another thing that we'll talk about later on in the leadership, but I think it's so important to put ourselves out there outside of our so-called brick and mortar and be available to our communities. So
Well, like here, I found it, so I'm new. And so the librarians, and we have a good number of librarians that have the degree, they're supposed to be performances based on their programming, collection development, community engagement, and their time covering a service desk. What I found is for community engagement, I said, well, how are y'all measuring that? And so they have a spreadsheet on the number of nonprofits or groups that they, go out and meet. And I said, okay. And I saw the spreadsheet, and there was like 55 organizations that they reached out to. I said, well, how many partnerships, how many programs, what became of those 55 touches? 0. I said, so we bat 0%. So we're obviously, this library needs to learn what community engagement really means. And part of it, again, the word trust came up. The word trust, you got to trust your community, and you need to realize that we're not in control, that, the community is the community and we're just a part of it. And we need to trust the community to help us do our programming and help us serve our community better. And we don't always have to be in 100% control of it. And librarians can help curate programming. I think one of the biggest successes we had in Georgetown was we didn't do all the programming. We would find people in the community that actually could do the programming for us, and found, we had such a great, rich community of retirees. And we had a gentleman who worked for NASA who won the Congressional Medal of Honor to bring the Apollo 13 people back, right? Well, my gosh, why wouldn't you allow this guy to tell that dramatic story about how those astronauts were trapped and he helped bring them back, and his part in that history of, the space program. But again, if we're not even knowing that member is out there in the community that can do that programming, unless, and we didn't know he existed until we found out that he existed. And then we were like, hey, would you mind doing a program for us? And he was like, of course, I'd be glad to do a program for you. So again, you really got to get out there into your community, and really that's a part of leadership too. It's like, get out of your office. Sometimes you just got to get out into the community and find out, read the newspaper, read the letters to the editor. You're librarians. Y'all are supposed to be the most informed people in the community. So use that knowledge that you have, get out of your comfort zone, and call someone up out of the blue and say, hey, I just read this article about you in the paper. You sound like you'd be great to do a program here at the library. And the librarian can just hand it over and sign up the room and all that. And I think, again, it's like, that's what we need to learn. We need to trust our community. We're a part of the community there. They would really trust the library more, or really value the library more, when you came and approached them to help you do something else. And maybe that's a lesson in this, in leadership, is, again, just putting yourself out there. And it's okay if it fails. It's all right if you have a dummy, bad program, it just didn't work. But I again, for the most part, it's not going to happen, or it's going to be rare. And if it does, it's okay. You move on and you do the next program. Any other comments on that? Okay, going once, twice. All right, I want to thank everybody. It has been interesting. Ken, before we go, I just read too about the library director in Montgomery County that was fired. Any comments? I mean, how are you guys doing in Texas? Let me just put that out there. How are y'all doing? I mean, I still read and text people from Texas from time to time, and I hope it's not as dire as it sounds. So let me just put that out there. How are y'all doing? Sandy, I see your head shaking.
It's one of those, we're in awe of what's going on, very shocked, hanging in as we see all these things coming out. We kind of research. I made sure, some people are reacting very broadly, and it's the all those bans on DEI and the whole, you can't have the special months and stuff. And, I made sure I read that very clearly, and some people are reacting and not doing stuff, I made sure our Black History Month went up right when it was supposed to. All we can do, is we're watching. There's nothing saying we can't do this stuff. We do it. We really fight for our people and our community and their rights. I don't know. We just are plugging for it. I think maybe it's because I'm nearing retirement that I don't care.
Yeah.
You start getting more and more, come get me or whatever. But we push those boundaries and we stay within. But it is very, very, very disturbing what's out there and what could come. So we're just hanging in there.
I see that Elizabeth said there's some cost to ban books at the school district. Anybody else want to comment on what's happening there in Texas and the environment? All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank Plan. Thank you, the State Library. Thank everybody who's supporting this. I will look forward to meeting with you next time, and we'll be going over again vision and mission of your library and how that will leadership and how that goes. But for today, I appreciate your participation and look forward to seeing you guys and hope things go well in Texas. So
Thank you, Eric. We missed you here in Texas.
I miss you guys. I really do. All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate you coming in again and doing this training. This is awesome.
No problem.
So just for everybody, just to let you know that I will be sending out, this is being recorded. I'll send out the link and the transcripts and everything so you can look at the comments as well. And just give me a few days or so to work on that and get the video ready and everything, and I'll get those out to you as soon as I can.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.
All right. Y'all take care. Have a good day, everybody.